Hey everybody, this is Mike with Asymmetrical Preparedness. This video is about building a survival community. You know, we've said, if you guys have read dystopian fiction or anything like that, you always see about how they build their survival communities. How they always have the perfect setup and they always have the perfect people. They have the military guy, they have the doctor, they have the mechanic, they have everything perfect. They have a big, huge, compound with a bunker on lots of land and all that stuff like that. Well, that's not reality. But some things to think about. And this, it all depends on how many people we have, how much money we have, how much land we have, what our situations are. So they're all different. So this is just generally speaking some things to think about if you're thinking about building a survival community now or during SHTF, during an event, post event, that kind of stuff. So it's basically something just to kind of keep an eye on, take some notes maybe, and have in the back of your mind so that whenever and if ever you're in that situation, you're a little better prepared. So land, yeah, you got to have enough land. You got to have enough land to grow the food and raise the food to support the number of people that are going to be living there. Hopefully more, because more people will show up probably. Yes, you will also have deaths, but hopefully you will grow in numbers, not lessen in numbers. Buildings. Yeah, you got to have buildings. I mean, I like the idea of individual cabins for people to live in and then like a lodge for communal dining. I think that's cool. It keeps the community together. Good conversations. It's also where like meetings can happen, town councils, that kind of stuff. People. How many you got to have people? How many people do you have? Do you have enough people to do all the things that's required to be in a community? What about resources? Do you have water? Do you have enough land? Are there trees on your land for firewood? All these kind of things. It's wild game available. Um, all this stuff. You guys know what I'm talking about. Resources. Yeah, like I said, area to farm and raise animals. That's very important because you're going to have to produce your own calories. You can have a bunch of food storage, and I hope you do. I hope everybody, if you form one of these, I hope everybody in your community does. And that's another thing. You're going to have to pay attention to who's bringing what and figure out a way to communally dispense it. Or if people keep their own and have to provide for their own. It's whether or not, however you want to run it, whether you're talking pure capitalist or slightly socialist or pure socialist. Um, but in this situation, a small scale, just the ability to survive, the communal thing isn't that bad for me. I'm not a socialist whatsoever. I'm a pure, conservative, capitalist, stuff like that. I believe in free market. I believe in hard work and earnings and making your own way, of course. But in situations like this, it may be better to have a communal thing, or maybe have a communal requirement. Maybe before you can gain access, you have to provide a month's worth of food for you and your family into communal space or communal storage. That would be good. And then whatever excess you have, you get to keep. So it's still capitalist. It's not, full-on communist, socialist, something like that. So that's a good idea. Some people may not be prepared. And this is, okay, actually, first let me go back. Bug out location or small town. If you're talking bug out location, you're going to run into a lot more difficulties because you won't have necessarily the personnel required or the area required. If you're talking about a small town, kind of forms its own little community thing, well, you're going to have people that are really prepared in that community and people that are less prepared, or some people that are totally unprepared. So how do they provide? How do they fit into the picture? How do you get them to pull their weight, and for everybody to not think that they're taking advantage of the situation, that they're pulling their part of the weight around there. That's important because you don't want any hard feelings between people. You're going to have to establish SOPs, standard operating procedures, a community charter or bylaws, or a system of laws, basically a form of government you're going to have to come up with. Voting, rules, regulations, all that kind of stuff. You're going to have to figure out leadership, positions, offices, who does what, how do they get elected. Town council, is it a pure democracy, or is it some things are everybody votes for, some things the council votes for. There's a lot to it. Crime and punishment. I mean, laws, things are going to happen. You know, nobody's perfect. So you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that, and how to go about doing that. So you're going to think about that. Also, enforcement of laws. Who do you have? Who's going to be the, the enforcers? Who's going to be basically law enforcement? Do you have former law enforcement? Do you have active law enforcement? Do you have military? What all is involved in this? And like I said, these are all just things to think about. You can go super in depth and take hours and hours and hours on this topic, if not days on this topic. I'm just going to do a quick kind of covering some of the things we need to be thinking about and planning for. Yeah, crime, punishment, enforcement. Work equals eat. Don't work equals don't eat. That's the way I look at it. Participation, division of labor. You have to produce. And if you're going to have to split people up based on skills. And what skills do they have? If they don't have any skills, well, they'll be like a general laborer. They can work in the fields. They can work on the garden. They can raise animals. They can go scouting. They can sit a LPOP, listening post observation post, or a guard shack or something like that, There's always something for somebody to do. If they're able-bodied, and even if they're not able-bodied, if they're disabled or older, hey, they probably have a wealth of knowledge they can train people on, skills that they can train and teach people on. So that may be their role in it, the elderly or the disabled. Maybe an instructor role, an oversight role, a leadership role, a mentoring role. All these things are very important. Don't disregard elderly people or disabled people. They have a lot to offer. How do you, so division of labor, how do you divide it so it's equal? Equity in work. Bringing in new people, how do you go about it? Who votes? How the vote is? Does it have to be unanimous? Does it have to be 51%? What does it have to be? This is all personal preference. This stuff you and your group is going to have to decide. Selection of a council, kind of like a group of elders. I like that idea. I really like that idea. And those elders will be voted on by the people and elected by the people. I think that's kind of cool. Obviously, you always keep an odd number so you don't have a split vote. Defense. You got to prepare for the common defense. Manpower. Perimeter. How big is your perimeter? How far out are you going to have it secured? I'm going to do another video here shortly about perimeter defense. How to set up perimeter defense properly and stuff like that. So I'm not really going to go into it in this video. That's a separate video I'm going to do. I already have it, I already wrote my notes and stuff like that. I just got to find time to film it and upload it. Patrols, posts. How are you going to go about that? Patrol rotations, personnel rotations, going to the bathroom while you're on post. All these, that's actually covered in the other video more. Comms between posts and people in the fields and stuff like that. A warning system, an early warning system, gathering intelligence. Everything that makes up a town, you're going to have. You're going to have to all these positions. What about supply? Yeah, you're going to have to keep track of supply, inventories, disbursement, stuff like that. You're going to have like a county store or a little community store, for people to get things that they don't have. Maybe people can turn in items to receive other items, like a barter society. That's a really good idea, so that you can have like maybe like a running thing, or maybe on Saturdays or something like that, you would have a barter little community market or something like that. This is all just thoughts about things you can do. Earnings. How are people going to earn? Are they going to earn goods? Are they going to earn services? That's all stuff you're going to have to work out. What's the value of what, and how to relatively and equitably barter in these situations. You're going to have to establishing the value of goods. Also, property ownership. How are you going to establish property ownership? If you got the person that owns most of the land in the area, they're going to have a heads up, or they're going to have all this land, but then new people coming into the community that may be very well, maybe get an emergency room doctor or a special forces medic or something like that. Hoo-yah. Really? So you're not going to let them have land ownership just because they're new? So you're going to have to find some way to divvy it up. You're going to have to give these people a sense of ownership of the community so that they can build that esprit de corps, and so they can feel like they're part of something. That's vital in humanity, that we have to feel like we're part of something. So property ownership, it builds community. You're going to have to find out a way to split up land, stuff like that, that is equally acceptable to both parties. Work assignments based on skills. You're going to figure that out. Who works where, when, how long, what's the work day, all of these kind of things. There's so much to go over. The biggest thing though is adapt as necessary. You're gonna have to have the ability to adapt. You're gonna have to have, um, a group, maybe the town council, that you can go to mediate differences and disagreements calmly and civilly. That's very important. A center of faith, building a church maybe, or if you're in a town, maybe it already has a church. Leadership with that. How do you deal with charity? How do you deal with new people? How do you deal with scouting, patrolling, foraging, communications with other towns, working with other towns, trading, bartering with other towns in other areas, other locations. All this stuff, and setting up a moral, just society with equitable laws, um, and all these things is just, there's a lot to deal with. Um, Security, I think, would be the big thing, though. How do you deal with marauders? What's your response? You're going to have perimeter security. You're going to have react teams, like reactionary teams, response teams, tactical teams that go in, that are maybe held in reserve. You're going to have the reserve forces. And your reserve forces may be, people working in the field or doing other things. They just have their gear next to them at all times. Their tactical gear, their weapons, and everything like that. And you got to have, I go over a bunch. Actually, this is a little more on the security, the setting a perimeter for a community stuff. But so I'll kind of save that for then. But there's a lot to deal with. It's a lot to go over. Take notes on this video if you feel like it. If you feel like these are good ideas, write them down and expound upon it. I'm not covering everything. There's a lot of things I'm probably not thinking about that aren't coming to my mind that I didn't jot down notes for. All those things. What applies to you? What do you think is going to be important? What do you think could come up? What potential questions? What potential problems? How to mitigate them? All these things. So anyway, this is the video, just about community building. How to build a community, and not really how to, but things to think about when you're looking at that, and ideas about how to go about doing that. So brainstorm with you by yourself, with your family, with your friends, with your mag, with any people that you might think are involved with this, neighbors maybe, even if they're receptive. So anyway, and also one thing to think about is leadership. Peacetime leadership isn't necessarily the best thing for wartime leadership, meaning who's in charge and who's the leaders pre-event maybe not be capable of handling leadership during an event and post-event world. It's a totally different world. It's a totally different set of parameters. So just because you're using a town and there was a mayor and a city council doesn't necessarily mean those people need to stay in charge. That's for sure. The community can work that out. But just remember that may not be the case. You probably need to elect new leaders. So have that in mind also. There's so much to cover, like I said. This is just the basics. Take some notes and then brainstorm with with people around you, and war game it back and forth. Potential threats, potential answers, questions, all this stuff. So anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much, and I appreciate also all the comments and the video ideas, so I can stay current with what you guys are thinking and what you guys are what concerns you. Funny thing is, some of them came up and I'm like, oh shoot, I already did research and jotted down notes and stuff like that for some of those videos. I just have yet to film them. So I'm like, good idea. Gotcha already. Anyway, prep a little every day. Prep it a peace of mind out of fear. I love you guys a lot, and blessings to you and yours.